Woo! Alright, it's been a little while since I've done one of these. I filled up this little sheet that I keep notes on. Is way more than full. And I'm going to have a hard time reaching back and remembering some of this stuff. But I figured it's full. That's the time that things need to happen. I just got done putting a donation page on my website, which I probably should have done from the beginning, but it's up there now. And I wrote an article this morning, the second article in the comic book series. So, well, I guess that's a good first thing. I started writing a comic book. And how that happened is I went to a 5x5 night, which is part of a venture capital fund, which is a seed fund. So they give out small amounts of money for businesses to start. Started by Rick Voss, originally in Start Garden down in Grand Rapids, and now they travel around Michigan a little bit. This one was in Muskegon at the Muskegon Inventors Network. Saw some other people I know there. Someone from Toastmasters that has been working on some business stuff. Someone from Muskegon Community College that I used to work with. Found out he's one of the original members of the Muskegon Inventors Network, which was funny. And then Michelle, which is another woman that I met through Toastmasters. She was a judge on the panel because she works for Consumers Power. And we were talking, I was talking about the different things I'm doing. I'm editing those horror stories with Oleg in Russia, and that's going well. I keep editing a few of those a week, and I'm writing various different things that I've been working on and writing. So I was talking about those and giving speeches for the Harry Potter Festival and stuff. And she was like, I need to connect you with someone. I have a friend that's an illustrator. He has an idea for a comic book, but he needs a writer to really sit down and write it. His name's Chuck. So she gave me his info, and we got connected, or gave my info to him, I guess. He connected with me. We scheduled time, met up. Oddly enough, it was right in the middle of when we were having horrible storms. Power was down everywhere. I got in my car to drive out there. It's in Muskegon. And stop at a gas station because I need gas. The gas station's out of power. I go, oh boy. So I'm driving to Muskegon. I'm like, the next one that I stop at, hopefully that has power because I can't drive into Muskegon and back. Well, I probably could have on the gas, but then I would be out. I would definitely need to stop at the nearest gas station the next time I went out. So, but the next one had power, but they had trouble because we were in the middle of a blizzard, storm, and whatnot. And so I paid for it with my card at the pump like I normally do, and it didn't go. It was still asking for the money when it got done, so I had to go inside. It's like thing didn't seem to work. They're like, oh, they're all iced up, so they're not working right, and then we figured it out, and actually it did charge me. So luckily they checked that, because otherwise I would have been charged twice, and that would have been horrible. So that worked out well. Went over to Chuck's, and then we talked. I was expecting to talk for maybe like an hour or two. We talked for like 5 hours about all sorts of stuff, including the comic book. Kind of came up with a plan. That was over a month ago now, I think. And I've started thinking about it. I need time for story ideas to kind of roll over in my head in general. I mean, which is not uncommon for writers. Mark Twain thought about this one short story that's like 3,000 words for 12 years before he wrote it. And he actually thought about it for 12 years. Then he went to an editor and said, hey, I've got this idea for a story. I've been thinking about it for 12 years, but I can't figure out how to write it. So here, I'm going to give you the idea for the story. You know a bunch of writers because you're an editor. You should tell a different writer to write this story. So he tells the idea to the writer or to the editor, and the editor says, why don't you just write it like you told it to me? And it's like, I guess I could try that. So Mark Twain went home, wrote the story in 4 hours, and then published it. It's called The Death Wafer, or The Death Disc, and it's really good. So he used to say that book, or that story, took him 12 years and 4 hours for 3,000 words. It's funny. And I think it was either Tom Sawyer or Huckleberry Finn, one of the two. He wrote half of it, I think Tom Sawyer, and stopped. Just threw it in a drawer. It stayed there for a few years, like 4 years or something. Then he came back to it when he was kind of inspired again and finished it off. And when he died, he had a bunch of books and projects half finished that, as part of his will, he had destroyed upon his death. And whoever was executing the will did do that. Franz Kafka, famous writer, he had never published anything in his life. And his will said that all of his works were supposed to be burned, and whoever was executing his will didn't do it. They published all this stuff instead. Now he's known as one of the best writers in history, especially from an existentialist fictional perspective. Funny how it works. Anyways, a lot of writers would do that. Jurassic Park, I think Michael Crichton said he thought about that for 8 years before he started writing it. Stuff like this. So I didn't want to wait that long on this comic book because you're going to work with someone else on it, which is kind of, unique. I haven't done that. So, and it's weird. Some people write novels with other people, but most people don't. Comic book is a little different. Some comic book writers write and draw everything, but most don't. Usually there's writers and illustrators and people that do the lettering, which are separate. So it's normal for that type of thing, or a television show, or sometimes movies. Movies, a lot of times just one person writes the scripts. Television shows usually have multiple writers. Sometimes they have like a whole group of writers that sit in a room and make episodes. Some of the best shows, though, are written by one person. Like Vikings was written by Michael Hurst, and Michael Hurst alone is the one guy who wrote this entire show, bunch of seasons, bunch of episodes, and it's excellent. So I think there's probably advantages and disadvantages to everything. Alright, anyways, we're just going to start at the beginning of this thing and go through and see if I can remember the notes that I wrote down. My muscle recovery was super enhanced when I had a good supply of colostrum, which is mother's milk. I get raw colostrum from the Amish, so it's cow. I tried that a year ago. My digestive system couldn't handle it, but this time it could. And, I worked out one time, which I work out about once a month, maybe twice a month, usually once a month now. And I'm getting quite strong. Like, my grip is crazy strong again now, and my muscles are decent too. And because I work out with hammers, I have to work out with really light weights so they don't pull my spine out of place. And, well, we'll get to it. Well, we might as well dive into that now. Just recently, a couple of weeks ago, I also tried a neck bridge, because me and my chiropractor were discussing, one of my chiropractors, were discussing neck strengthening exercises. And one of the best ones is the neck bridge. Called it wrestler's bridge, where you go over backwards and lay on your forehead. And I did it supported with my hands. I used to be able to hold that without hand support for 5 minutes. I did a lot of neck bridging. I had a really big, strong neck. And I haven't been able to do that really over the last couple of years. I've tested different neck strengthening things, and they always caused more problems than they did solutions. But I thought maybe it was time. Maybe I'd had enough adjustments and enough healing that I could start trying to strengthen the muscles. And the idea is if I can strengthen the muscles in my neck, then when they're well aligned, they'll stay there. I'll be more resilient. I can do more stuff without messing myself up so much. And I held it for 30 seconds, supported with my hands, and I did not feel bad afterwards, which I've tried it a few times in the last few years, and every time it kind of messed me up. I just couldn't do it, couldn't handle it. And this time I felt fine afterwards. And I did notice that the muscles inside my neck, like the internal muscles, outer muscles too, but you can feel the internal part of it, which is kind of weird, were just weak. Just extremely weak. So every time I work out, I'm going to add that in too. My workout takes like 20 minutes now, so in 30-second to 60-second exercise isn't going to make much of a difference anyway, so it's easy to do. And I have enough recovery that way, working out, once every 2 to 4 weeks, probably once every about 4 weeks usually, that, well, I'm just super happy about that. And ever since the last couple of weeks, my adjustments haven't been much of adjustments. Like, my spine is more stable in my cervical spine, so super excited about that. This colostrum I tried a while ago. I don't know when I shot the last one of these. I guess I should maybe date these. This was quite a while ago, maybe 2 months ago? Over a month ago. And I had, how much did I get from them? Like a gallon, 2 gallons, something like that. And I was drinking a glass of colostrum a day for almost 2 weeks. And I worked out in the middle of that one. That's just happened to be where my workout time fell. And I did not get DOMS. Now, DOMS is delayed onset muscle soreness. And it's because when you're working out, you're tearing muscles, so you're causing a lot of damage. And then the next day, your muscles will be sore. And the next day, your muscles will even be more sore if you worked out really hard. So not working out too much, I create a little bit of an inroad, not too extreme because I don't work out that much because my healing isn't as fast as normal. And but I create a little bit of an inroad, so I should get a little DOMS, you know, and I've worked out thousands of times. I don't know how many thousands of times in my life, and I'm used to DOMS. It's normal that your muscles would hurt and be sore, and that's just a normal feeling for the couple of days after working out hard. And I didn't get it. My muscles just recovered. It was pretty crazy. So I talked to Mervin, my Amish friend there, and I'm supposed to get a lot of colostrum as soon as it gets due here in the spring, which, you know, we're kind of in the spring. It's March 18th. It's kind of sunny out. It was frosty this morning, but we had a lot of rain last week. The fog was crazy. There was water over the roads everywhere. The whole driveway was just like a lake that then froze over. The other day I slipped in the driveway because the entire thing was pure black ice. And our driveway should like slant and curve and stuff, and it was just flat because the water had just filled everything up and then frozen. It was pretty crazy, and I forgot for a moment. Yeah, so super excited about the colostrum too when I can get it next. So that's good health stuff. Although I did develop a little bit of a cough near the end of taking the colostrum, which I think, so if the colostrum is enhancing my immune system so much, so rapidly, I think what might have happened is something like acute neuroimmune hypersensitivity. All right, which just means that my systems became really sensitive. My immune system became really sensitive. And so one part of your immune system is coughing, right? You get something in your throat, you try to expel it out. Coughing is just part of your immune system. Well, if that gets too sensitive, then you start coughing more, essentially for no real reason. You're just hypersensitive. And I think that might have been what that was. And that'll seem not true because we're going to come up on other health issues again here later. But yeah, since it's been a long time since I did one of these videos, even though the notes here are going to be close together, actually quite a bit of time in between these different things. I wrote down on here this one conversation I had with a Chinese father, you know, and I've had dozens and dozens of students over the last couple of months. But the one Chinese father, he stepped in at one point in a lesson, and we were just talking. It was like, it was a little boy that was, he'd gotten, you know, we'd done a lesson essentially, and then he got bored, ran off to do something. The father stepped in for the last couple of minutes, and we just kind of talked. And I was telling him, he wasn't really interested in work and how much I make and stuff like this. And I was telling him I was making 125 RMB per hour, so 125 yuan per hour, which, I don't know, it fluctuates based on the exchange rate, but it probably comes out to something like 18 bucks an hour right now. But it's way more complex than that because it depends if students fill up or not and stuff like that. But so I was telling him that. And he was saying he works at a car wash. And he was like, wow, you know, you're making really good money. You're like rich over there. I'm like, no, that's not great money over here. And he was saying he would really like to get a second job, but it's illegal. So he can't. Which I, you know, thought was funny and a little disturbing. And it's amazing how countries purposely limit their own economies so much. I do not fully understand why. Harry Potter. All right, so I wrote a few articles on Harry Potter, going over the archetypes in Harry Potter, stuff like this. People really liked him. It was very interesting. The woman that runs the Potter in the Park Festival, which is a big Harry Potter festival in Sparta, Michigan every year. I went to it last year. You know, thousands of people. And she read it, and she loved one of the articles and contacted me if I wanted to be involved in any way. And I was like, yeah, I definitely want to be involved. We were trying to work out how I'd be involved. And I'm like, well, I can write, and I can do public speaking. And so like, kind of which one of those would be good? And she said she's wanted to have a professor of Muggle studies ever since they started the festival, but she just hasn't encountered the right person, that type of thing. Muggle studies are the study of non-magical people. Right, because everyone in not everyone, but most of the people in Harry Potter, the featured people, are wizards and witches. And so people that aren't wizards and witches are muggles, right? It's a British term. Non-mag is the American term for the same thing, non-magical people. And So we worked that out, and I'm going to be giving some speeches, not sure exactly how many yet, but potentially 2 15-minute speeches, 2 30-minute speeches. So an hour and a half of content just for a one-off event just for fun at a Harry Potter festival. But it'll be fun. It'll be cool. A lot of stuff to work out on that, just a lot of stuff to work out on that. I'm writing a series of articles on the website about those speeches. And I've written a bunch of different stuff, although I've had some slow periods here. I wrote an article on suicide, an interesting note on suicide from Viktor Frankl, I believe is what I titled it. And Viktor Frankl is the founder of logotherapy, survived the Nazi concentration camps. And that had 30 shares on Facebook through different psychology groups, mostly from psychologists. And I got several comments from psychologists saying that was an excellent article on psychology. So that was pretty interesting, because usually I'm somewhat unorthodox, and it's not normal to get good comments from people in the industry when I write stuff, just in general. But that was interesting. I have a friend, Joel, that's getting married in September, and he asked me to be in the wedding, which, other than officiating the wedding last year, would be the first wedding I'm in, even though I've gone to a bunch of weddings. I have 3 other weddings that I'm going to this summer, so 4 weddings total. We did do a sledding party. Wow, that's a while ago. I think that was in January, right? So this stuff might be quite a bit older than 2 months. Maybe that other stuff, all the stuff I went through, well, most of the stuff I went through already, might have actually been like 3 months old. Something like that, 4 months. Went to a sledding party at Ron and Karen's up in Cadillac, and injured my thumb. I only went down there once, but they had not enough snow at the time, which is funny because we got a bunch of snow after that and whatnot. But I just went down once, and he had some tires set up for the one turn because there hadn't been enough snow to pile it all up, and went right over. And one of my mom, Tony, she brought up some tubes, but they're like water tubes, and they were super slick. So those things got some speed, went up this thing, and went right over and landed on my whole body, like twisted and landed on my thumb. And that sucker was sprained. That was pretty messed up for like a couple of months, actually. I had some pain in that, but it's good now. The writing group. I started going to a writing group at Hackley Public Library. It meets every other week on Wednesday, and it is cool. I've been writing articles on that too, on what I'm writing there. And it's fun. It's just an hour. We do like 20 minutes of writing, and then everyone goes around and reads their little thing. It's just like a one-off thing. There's not really critiques, and it's just engaging. It's the best writing group I've been to. I've been to a few, and haven't really liked any of them except for this one. Let's see. I have a note for health experiment here, but I don't remember which health experiment that was. So, yeah. Wrote a series, 2 articles on IQ, which were super controversial. Like, maybe the most controversial thing I've ever written, because in the Mensa group, the High IQ Society and whatnot, and people hated the fact that I was saying that IQ isn't everything. Wrote a very controversial thing on global warming. Had some interesting responses, so it was cool. I'm pro global warming, so that's some support for all these things too. Spring Festival. I just wrote that down. What did I do for Spring Festival? Must have done something for Spring Festival. I'm not sure. It's a Chinese festival. I had a week where I didn't work. Because in China, they take the week off, like the week's off school. Essentially no one works in China. If you work at a manufacturing plant and you order parts from China, and like they don't work on Spring Festival week. Well, a lot of people forget that, and then the parts end up being late compared to what the people want. It happens every year. And so last year I did work during the Spring Festival week. It was just slower. This year they just canceled work that week. So it's like, no work, no pay. So that was, I had a couple of classes actually with one-off students, but that was it. Let's see. Oh, we only lost power for like 3 hours one day. A bunch of people around here were out of power for 4 days, or 3 or 4 days. I think the most was 4 days. We were out of power for like 3 hours, but because people were without power for so long, Consumers Energy did a promotion thing where they sponsored buying some of the tickets for the movie theater. And so we went up there and got some free movie passes. We went to that with Mom and one of her friends. Maybe Kristen was in there. Yeah, I can't remember. That was cool, because I don't usually go to the movies anymore because I can get any movie or television show I want online. So it's kind of just a frivolous expense, but it's still fun to go there. They got, sit in the recliners. It's fun. I went to a live in-person Mensa meeting, which is the High IQ Society, and I found the Facebook groups and whatnot to not be that good. I haven't gone to any like the regional Mensa festivals and get-togethers and stuff like that. Those are probably cool. But this group I went to in Grand Rapids was pretty awesome. It was a lot of fun. I mean, they just meet at a restaurant. They get a private room in the back, and then they just eat and sit around and talk about whatever. There's no structure or anything like that. It was pretty fun, though. It was nice. All right. At one point, I did have a major health downturn. I'm not sure exactly why. I think it might have been I was relaxing on what I was eating, so I was kind of eating whatever, because my digestive system is healing, and my health is healing overall. But I didn't go extreme or anything, but I think just kind of relaxing on it and eating maybe some fiber every day, which fiber's the bad thing if you have major digestive issues. I ended up with kind of a physical and mental downturn as well, because the brain is a physical organ, right? So I had brain fog, I had major joint pain, I had really itchy skin, dropped into a depression, had more anxiety, had a feeling of impending doom and futility. My teeth started hurting, which is a super bad sign, kind of scares me, because when my health was really bad, a while ago, this is not recently at all, this is over the last couple of years, when my health got really bad, my teeth got infected, my gums got infected, because my immune system was just horrible. My immune system was attacking my own body, and so I was having my autoimmune issues, but not attacking the diseases. I mean, immune systems don't get any more messed up than that. And so I had gum infections, and when I finally got those healed through all of my different health experiments and whatnot, that part of the gums died. So it didn't heal. It was too damaged, apparently. So I have a little bit of a right, my teeth are a little too exposed. It's a little bit of a receding gum on just certain teeth, mostly these front bottom teeth right there. And so that's not good. Your gums can only recede so far before your teeth get loose and then fall out. So that kind of makes me paranoid. Which just recently I'd been feeling, so this is a while ago. This was a while ago. I recovered from that and everything. But just recently, I kind of felt bad for like the last 2 weeks. And I think what it might have been is I essentially got a cold. And I didn't have strong symptoms from the cold. But I just kind of felt wore down and it didn't seem to be recovering. And I had a few little symptoms and one of those light little coughs again. And finally I was like, man, I gotta do something different. And so I took some vitamin C, a bunch of it. So vitamin C is a super short half-life, and I haven't been taking vitamins because none were testing good or working before, and then I realized I had to cut out all the fiber and all these diet experiments that I've done over the last year or two. So you take vitamin C how you want to take it. If you really want to make a difference, take it with lysine for one thing. That really helps. Nobel Prize winning chemist, inventor of molecular chemistry, Linus Pauling, has super great health information on this. His name was ruined by the super corrupted medical industry later. I don't know how they have more authority on chemistry than one of the greatest chemists of all time, but nevertheless, you take vitamin C, which is ascorbic acid, you have to take it often, right? So your body is only going to absorb a small percentage of whatever pill you eat. It doesn't really matter what size, because it's only going to absorb the same amount, which is a small amount. And so I get like the 500 milligram ones, take those, but you take them along with a lysine pill, but you take it every hour, right? And now that can make a huge difference in your health very quickly. So I did that for one day. And the next day I woke up with like really intense cold symptoms, all the snot and the coughing. And then I did that another day, and then I was fine. So I think I had like a cold that I wasn't really getting strong symptoms for, maybe because of my fairly strict, odd diet, but my body couldn't get over it for some reason, because I still do seem to have a hindered immune system for some reason, which I'm hoping that the colostrum will help correct that when I go through large amounts here soon, which we're in the spring, so it should be coming due, should be having new calves here soon. So those are interesting experiments. To switch it up here, I went to see Dave Ramsey with a friend speak in Grand Rapids, so that was really cool. That was fun. That was interesting. On a similar note, I couldn't pay my taxes. So I, calculated my taxes out, and I mean, we're still ahead of time here, April 15th, so we're still almost a month away. And I do haven't paid now. But I calculated out my taxes, and I owed $1,300, right? $1,300. And I didn't have that much money. I was not expecting it to be that large. I was expecting it to be about half of that. And so I did not have enough money to pay that. I've had to scramble to get enough money to pay that here, but I still do have it paid off a month in advance. So you don't want to mess with the IRS. All right? They will ruin your life. Ask a bunch of people that are put in prison over that. That's an interesting thing there. Anyways. What do I got on the side? Oh, I wrote down shoes. My shoes are in super horrible shape. I need new ones, but I'm going to buy like $150 shoes when I buy them instead of just crappy cheap shoes, because then they'll last me like 5 years. So if you prorate it out, it actually ends up being cheaper. But I can't get them yet. My car radio, so one day I drive to the farm on Sunday to get the goat's milk that I get, which I turn into kefir, which I'm drinking a lot more of that, because there for a while I was buying Wallaby kefir from the store, which is really good. It's cow's milk, and it tastes delicious, and I wanted to switch over to try digesting more cow dairy, and because my system couldn't do that for a while, and then I wanted to be able to have the colostrum, so I was doing that leading up to that, and then I kind of got into the Wallaby because it tastes so good, so I was drinking a lot of it, but it's super expensive. So now I've mostly converted back to drinking my own kefir from the raw goat's milk. So the one Sunday, I go to the farm, and I park in front of the barn, I turn off my key, I open the door, and my radio just keeps playing. It's like weird, if I turn off the key and pull it out, then the radio should play until I open my door, and then the radio should kick off. There's like a sensor. And I'm like, I look at my hand, and the key's in my hand, so it should not be playing. I'm like, okay, well, I'll shut the door, go in, get my milk and stuff, come back out, radio's still playing in the car. So I turn the car back on, drive home, and I was thinking maybe it's just a fluke, maybe the sensor got stuck or something. And so I park at home, take the key out, same thing, open the door, nothing. I slam the door a few times, hoping to like jar a sensor loose or something. Nope, still playing. And so you can't just let your radio play all the time, obviously. It'll kill your battery in your car. Went to the neighbor who's a mechanic, and I was like, what do I need to do? Do I need to try to find the sensor or what? And he said, just pull the fuse. So I pulled the main fuse, which you had to get under the hood to pull that for the radio, and killed the radio, so now I have no car radio. Which is ironic, because I write articles for 88.9 Hey Radio out of North Muskegon, and I evaluate lyrics. They're a Christian rock station. I evaluate lyrics. And now I don't listen to the station, because I always used to listen in the car. Mom's car also broke down, blew out the transmission. It turns out it's a couple $1,000 transmission, and so she ended up buying a new car. We spent one entire day going to the dealership and stuff. Good dealership, Nissan. It ended up working out decently well, and she got an Altima, and that seems to be working fine. Needed a little bit of work, but she's been getting that done, so that's pretty cool. So those articles I write for 88.9 Hey Radio, interesting thing is I gave 2 speeches. So I'm not consistently going to Toastmasters anymore. Sometimes I'm stopping into the Grand Haven one, sometimes I'm stopping in the Muskegon one, sometimes I'm stopping in the Montague one. I'm going to stop by the Montague one today. This last week I went to the Grand Haven one and gave a speech, because last week I stopped by and they had a missing speaker for the next week. They were like, "Do you want to come?" I'm like, "Sure." So I went and gave a speech there this last Wednesday, and that was a lot of fun. I completely mistimed it, right? I'm out of practice for 5 to 7 minute speeches, so it's supposed to be a 7-minute speech. It ended up being, it would have been a 15-minute speech. I cut it short at like 9, so the ending was kind of weird. But I talked about alligator wrestling, and then I was trying to segue that into like meaning and value in life, and the meaning and value in life got all cut short. But then yesterday, I was going to help out someone from Toastmasters with their presentation they give once a month at Christian Haven Home, which is a senior living center in Grand Haven, and I went down there. So I get there at 2:07. I was told by Jerry to get there at 2:30, or that's what time they start, so I was planning on getting there a bit early. And so I get there, and I go up to the office, and I'm like, "Hey, I'm going to be helping out Jerry with his presentation that he does." And the woman's like, where have you guys been? Like, your people are all waiting in here. You're supposed to start at 2. And she must have been new or something, because every month they have it at 2:30. And for some reason, she had written down and announced that it was going to be at 2. So we had this room with a bunch of people in it, and I'd just been sitting there for a while. So I go in there, and I just kind of took over, and we got the lectern set up and the mic set up, and I gave a whole speech on Cain and Abel, Aesop's fables, the Columbine shooters, and resentment, how that all ties together, and how it's the most destructive emotion. And Jerry showed up for the end of it, and then he did his normal stuff. They had to break out hymnals and do little songs and whatnot. He gave his speech on Mary Magdalene, and then I gave another speech on evaluating lyrics from hard rock songs. And these are all older people. It's a senior living center. And I was basically promoting the idea that there's actual important depth to the lyrics in hard rock songs. So they're not an easy thing to dismiss once you start really looking at them. Also, some of those articles have really been liked by a lot of people, and the bands. Amongst the Giant just loved. I went really in depth in their article. They just loved it. And Collision of Innocence, which is the one I just did this last week, they really liked it. So it's pretty cool. I messaged Collision of Innocence if they would be interested, or if they thought bands would be interested in me doing some sort of breakdown speech about part of the lyrics to songs during or before a concert. And they said that might work. Didn't sound like they were super interested in doing it themselves, though. And then I messaged Amongst the Giants about it, and they didn't respond at all. But it was interesting. They really like when I go in deep like that. And Collision of Innocence, they have this first stanza is just 4 lines. It's not very many words. And the first 3 are all about this feeling of the void and emptiness, meaning of life, and you go into how that relates to values and that type of stuff, the existential vacuum from Viktor Frankl, logotherapy. And then the 4th line is something about this world not being good, essentially. And it's this Gnostic view, which is a huge debate in Christianity, all of religion, really. Dualism is very natural to come to, but there's 2 ways for dualism to occur. One is like God versus Satan, or 2 gods versus each other, good God, bad God. So that's both in this world. The other one is a spiritual plane of existence and a material plane of existence, right? And one of them is good, the spiritual, and the material is bad. And the Gnostics were big for the first 6 centuries of Christianity, and then the Catholics wiped them out after that. But it keeps coming back, the same basic idea of 2 planes of existence that are opposed to each other. Well, so the people that are listening to the song are getting this type of stuff through these hard rock lyrics. And some people don't realize that these important concepts and ideas and beliefs are being taught and debated and gone over and transmitted through songs like this. So there is real content there. The Cathars were a couple hundred years ago. They were a pretty big movement in France and Italy. The Catholics eventually wiped them out too. They believe that Zoroastrianism has a good God and a bad God. So a bunch of interesting stuff there. Let's see. Oh, I had a 7-year-old girl tell me that I need to hydrate more. I need to drink more water. That was hilarious. That was really good. Oh, so Liming, one of my students that I have every week, he just signs up for different hours and whatnot. his mom accidentally signed him up for 2 classes, signed him up for my class, which we usually go over science stuff, and another class, a math class, at the same time, right? So they were like overlapping. It was the only time that I've ever seen someone do 2 online classes at the exact same time, and it was pretty funny. We're pretty lighthearted, and he's an advanced student, so it ended up working out fine. At various times, a couple of times over the last few months, I've had twitching in my left eye. Uncontrollable twitching, not sure why, and it usually occurs like over a few days. Kind of weird. Let's see, neck bridge. Oh, my friend Casey arranged a meeting down in Grand Rapids with a handful of guys that all want to discuss politics and economics, and went down there. It was funny because there was Frozen on Ice at the L.C. Walker Arena. What is that? Maybe that's not the L.C. I can't remember. Whatever big arena there is in Grand Rapids there. So I'm driving around this thing, right, downtown Grand Rapids, and I'm going to go park in this parking garage. I get into my car, start going to walk down the stairs, and there's like all these people coming up the stairs. It was hard to get down the stairs. You couldn't use the elevators at all because those were all completely full with lines waiting for them and whatnot. And it's like parents with little girls dressed as princesses. Just tons of them. And there were people coming out, and then there were some people starting to go in for the next show. They were all over the place. It was packed. It was kind of, I mean, it was just funny seeing all these little girls dressed as princesses going by. Especially in the parking garages and on the stairs. They kind of look out of place. I think in the arena they probably look more in place. But anyways, made it. Made it over to his place. And that was a really interesting discussion for a few hours. We talked about economics and politics, and like half the guys were lawyers, which is interesting. And the idea of like relating things to an ideal didn't seem to work for the lawyers at all. They could not imagine an ideal. They're like, well, what's like practical on the ground? Like, why does an ideal matter? Like, what is an ideal? They seem to have a hard time imagining, all right, this is an ideal, which literally means you can't reach it, right? But it's the ideal, so we want to go in that direction. The purpose of the ideal is just to set the direction, but they couldn't do it for some reason, which is very interesting. They couldn't imagine ideals. They had a really hard time with that. Oh, I've been working on a value chart for making what is implicit explicit. Right? So like what I actually value seems to change a lot, and I think that probably goes with my very high openness scores and my very low conscientiousness scores. So I'm essentially made for chaos, right? And we live in a fairly stable world here, so people that are made for chaos don't do very good in a stable world because they end up just kind of causing chaos is what ends up happening. And I mean, the most important thing for success as far as inborn psychological factors go is conscientiousness, and I'm in the 0th percentile. So I'd probably psychologically be okay in super chaotic circumstances, but I'm not in super chaotic circumstances. I'm in really stable circumstances, and I'm not doing very well as far as general success is concerned, at least. So I was working on the value chart and trying to hold like very consistent values. Still having issues with that, but I think it's a very good way to progress. The reason I'm having issues with it is mostly because I value so many things, and it changes so much. So you got to try to reduce those down, which is already happening as I'm laying it out and I'm kind of structuring it and reviewing it. It's already reducing down, you know. So I might have there's creative, experiential, and attitudinal values. And then there's values in your past, your present, and your future. So I have a whole chart laying all this out. I have a spreadsheet in Google Docs where I'm really trying to make everything that is implicit, explicit, to really break it down. So I think there's a lot of promise there. Broth. So, man, I get tired of drinking the pork broth. You know, it doesn't taste super horrible, but it doesn't taste good. It's never something you're like, ooh, I would really like to have some of that pork broth. So I'm trying to make it into something else, more of like an onion soup, like onion soup with pork broth, but then I just filter out the onions so I don't get the fiber, and working on that progression. We'll see how that goes, how it progresses. taking an online course in writing from Dan Brown, which is a mega best-selling seller in thrillers, wrote the Da Vinci Code and Angels and Demons and a bunch of other things, and Neil Gaiman, who's a big science fiction, well, mostly fantasy author, and really cool stuff there. Really cool stuff there. I have several things that I want to buy tickets for, but my finances are so tight, I don't know if I can flip the bill on these, which these are going to be tiny little things. I need to get the Harry Potter tickets. That's $15. Symphony tickets would be very cool in Grand Rapids. They do symphony, like the best classical music is made now for movies. So they take a bunch of movies and they do the symphony things from the orchestra things. Tickets for that are only $18, but I might cut that. There's a 2-day horse training seminar around here from a guy that uses more naturalistic methods. And I really like horses. I don't know if my spine will ever be up to horseback riding again. So I don't know if that'll ever happen. That's probably a pipe dream. But I do like horses. And I really liked horseback riding when I did it for a little bit. Tickets for that are like a few $100s with your horse and everything, but you can audit the class, which just go there and hang out and kind of see what they're doing with a lunch included, which I probably couldn't eat, but for $20. So seems like a decent deal as far as the auditing goes. I need to go to a Moth event, and the Moth is a speaking event where they're telling personal stories based on a set of themes, and I would really like to participate. The issue is the nearest ones happen in Ann Arbor, right? So like 3 hours away. Those tickets are $15, but I need to go to one, see how it is, see how it goes, and then try to set myself up for doing it too, because they're like short little 5-minute ones. So I've given a ton of great stories based on my life in 5 minutes. Even gave one on Andrew dying at one point. That was 3 minutes that made 2 people cry in Grand Rapids. So it'd be fun to do that in more of a competitive atmosphere, maybe, or professional atmosphere at the Moth. So we'll see. I want to start going to a few plays too, because we have a few good companies that put on plays around here. Well, the Pigeon Creek Shakespeare Company down in Grand Haven. I think they're pretty good. They put on Shakespeare plays. And, I mean, you can get tickets to some of their stuff for like $14. In the Blue Lake Fine Arts Camp, which, you know, ironically, I grew up in Blue Lake, but haven't really done anything at Blue Lake Fine Arts Camp. They have an old theater, like the original, like how it would have actually been in Shakespeare's time. It's set up like that. And, I mean, tickets are just $20 for it. You know, I don't know if I can flip the bill for that, but we'll see, because it'd be super interesting, that's for sure. And then Mom and I were talking about trying to get down to the replica of the Ark and the replica of the Parthenon, which is Noah's Ark, and then the Parthenon is an ancient Greek building. They have full-size replicas down in the Appalachians for these. I think one is in Tennessee, one is in Kentucky, I believe, and it would be awesome. I mean, at some point, I want to see those, and that might be about as adventurous as I can get if I can't fly, because I had issues on the alligator wrestling trip, and I'm not sure if it was with the alligator wrestling or with the flying. It's kind of hard to tell. I need to take a flight where I don't do anything physical and see if just the flight messes me up, which I could. You know, you can get pretty cheap tickets, just like fly to Florida, fly back, and I haven't been to Florida, so that'd be good. Just to see if just the flight messes me up, or if it was the alligator wrestling itself, or both. You know, it took me 6 weeks of adjustments to get back to decent after the alligator wrestling. So that's quite a long recovery time. But I mean, if possible, at some point, I would like to go to Europe, and you know, I don't know if that's a pipe dream or a real dream at this point. So I have to figure out more about that. But staying on the ground, we could just drive down to the Appalachians. And I just heard that there is an airline, Southwest Airlines, putting in really cheap tickets, like $50 tickets from one way from California to Hawaii, and from Hawaii to California. So, and sometimes if you time it right, you can get cheap tickets from like Chicago to California, and connect on another cheap ticket from there to Hawaii. Might end up being quite a bit cheaper to go to Hawaii, because I would like to get there at some point too. Not too long ago, this is kind of before I felt the sickness and everything, so which is interesting. A few weeks ago, I had quite a bit of heart pain, and I'm not sure why. Didn't seem to be correlated to anything. I hadn't been doing anything hard. I mean, over the last few months, I've done a bunch of shoveling, and you know, I run out of breath, and my heart feels uncomfortable sometimes. But there didn't seem to be any reason, but I had a decent amount of heart pain that was lingering for a while. And maybe there was some damage, and that's what drove my immune system down and why I got a little bit of sick for those 2 weeks. I'm not sure, but it was kind of weird. And then I had the funk for the 2 weeks before. Oh, John Vervaeke is a psychologist from the University of Toronto. He's doing a course that I'm taking online, just on YouTube. It's free, on awakening from the meaning crisis. And it was excellent. I thought it was going to be like a 10-part course or something like that. And we're 9 parts in. It's going to be a 50-part course. They're all 1 hour each. The first 25 are kind of on the historical elements of meaning in life and that type of thing. And then he's a cognitive scientist, so the last 25 are going to be on that, developing new awakening practices, essentially. Super good. I've been also studying Harry Stack Sullivan, which is an older psychologist. This book here, Conceptions of Modern Psychiatry, he didn't publish much, which is pretty crazy. But most of the major psychological movements that have come about and gained notoriety and fame over the last handful of decades, they're really just reiterations of part of his work, which is pretty crazy. The more I study his stuff, the more I realize the new stuff isn't new, which I've studied a bunch of different psychologies. And it's like, wow, I thought this was kind of revolutionary, and it's really not. It's really just a reiteration of his stuff, which is actually better, I think, to a large extent. So I'm really diving into Harry Stack Sullivan. Super interesting stuff, that's for sure. I mean, this book, so in these, which were actually originally a series of speeches that he adapted into a book, he talks about the World War, which means it was before World War II and after World War I, right? There's only a very short period of time in history when you can refer to the World War. Also, read this book, Meaning of Life and Why It Matters by Susan Wolf. I can't believe I missed this book, right? Because I've explicitly studied the meaning of life quite a bit over my life. And I never heard of this book somehow. And it's not that good. Like, I started reading it, and the very beginning part, these are also adapted lectures, I thought it was really good. I was like, oh, this is really interesting. It seems like she's going to have a really good perspective. And she says something like this: meaning in life arises when subjective attraction meets objective attractiveness, and one is able to do something about it or with it. I'm like, wow, that's pretty good. That's pretty good. And then as you start diving into it, it gets worse and worse and worse. And when she starts trying to parse out what is subjective and what is objective, and it completely falls apart. And I think near the end it gets dangerous, because she's like, if you don't have economic advantages, if you don't have a good political system, you can't have meaning in life. Your life is meaningless. Like, wow, like who is she giving this speech to? Hopefully not poor people or people in bad economic situations, or college kids who have high suicide rates already. Disturbing. Yesterday, when I was in Grand Haven giving those speeches, I picked out this book, Terry Pratchett and Neil Gaiman, because I had a little bit of time to kill, so I stopped by a bookstore, the Bookman, and the other bookstores I wanted to stop to were closed. Good Omens. It's super good. It's about the apocalypse times, at least, I mean, I'm like a few pages in. Super interesting. And like Terry Pratchett, too, I read Going Postal by him about Discworld. He has a series of fictional books set on a disc world, a flat world, which is pretty funny. And I wrote an article on flat earth theory and how people might come to that psychologically, which I think is pretty good. It's a reactionary movement. Right? I've been reading scripts, so I read passenger scripts. They're over there somewhere that I had printed, some movie scripts that I just had printed and bound myself. But this one, sometimes the scripts are just sold. So Poldark, which is an excellent show. I have the novel. I read like half of the first novel. I don't like it so much. And mostly it's because of the accents and dialects that all the speakers have in their dialogue. But some of that was cleaned up when this woman, so it was originally written by Winston Graham, the novels were. And these are not new. I mean, I think the first television series for Poldark was done in the 1970s, so the books are from before that. But Debbie Horsfield, who was, I think, originally mostly a playwright, she rewrote these, and she cleaned a little bit of that up, and I think tightened the whole story up, and it's excellent. I mean, reading the scripts is really good. And I never liked reading scripts, right? Over the last couple of years, I've been trying to expand what I like to read. I've been trying to read some more poetry. You know, I read poetry when I was young in my teens, and then I kind of stopped reading poetry. Epic poetry, which I've never really read that very much of. and graphic novels and comic books, because I haven't read very much of those either. Now I'm writing a comic book, and I read this one, Secret Battles of Genghis Khan, and this is excellent. This is an amazing story. So that was really cool. And then Venom number 10 here. Let me grab these real quick. Venom number 10. This is an excellent story. Mostly takes place with two people talking at a table. Passengers, the movie Passengers, which I thought the movie was decent, and then I read the script, realized they changed a lot of the script for the movie. This isn't the shooting script, and I think this script would have been quite a bit better, actually, because I went back to watch the movie to kind of compare it. Wasn't that good? And Taboo, this is the first pilot episode of Taboo, starring Tom Hardy, and this thing was good. This is the first script that I read, and I was like, wow, that script is good. Which is interesting. And this is the first comic book that I read. And I was like, wow, this is a really good comic book story. But there are other ones. Like I read A Contract with God by Will Eisner. It's just kind of the founder of modern graphic novels. Super good, and it shows how deep comic books and graphic novels can be. I mean, that story starts out with a guy walking home in the rain in Brooklyn or the Bronx from his teenage daughter's funeral. So super intense, right? You think comic book, you usually don't think of that type of stuff, but they can be. And I've really been trying to work out which scripts to study, which movies to study, and stuff like this. And I have found that there's a lot of stuff that I don't particularly like, which makes sense. All right? There's Sturgeon's Law, which Sturgeon's Law is 90% of everything is crap. And this originally comes from science fiction and fantasy, where Sturgeon was in science fiction and fantasy, and someone had been reviewing some of his stuff and said, 90% of science fiction and fantasy is crap. And he said, actually, 90% of everything is crap. Like 90% of movie scripts are crap, 90% of romance novels are crap, like 90% of everything. And I think that applies to everything more in the world as well. But I've been really trying to work that out, and why romances work, because I'm not really into the romance genre. I'll write an article on that fairly soon. But as far as shows go, like movies, 50 First Dates by Adam Sandler, I think is a great love story, super interesting. Going Postal, I think is a good kind of like war story, but it's a modern like business war type story, super interesting. Begin Again is a super good music and career and work story. And then Poldark is my favorite show for sure, because I've watched some excellent shows that aren't that great to watch again. But Poldark is really good to watch again, which is very important. I watched Eureka recently, which is science fiction, which was a super good series, which I can't find the scripts for. I have a bunch of scripts for a bunch of stuff that I'm working on studying. But I went back to watch the first episode, and it wasn't that good. So it's going to be one of those shows that's good to watch once, but not twice. And I want to study the ones that you can watch over and over because they're just that good. And I've really been trying to organize that with all of my different types of reading. So, yeah, good. Let's see. I think that's about it. Yeah. I have some other stuff on here, but I can't remember what it means. So, laughing. I wrote down laughing, just laughing. Oh, I remember why now. I had a student, a young girl, I think she was 7 or 9, something like that, and she doesn't laugh, she doesn't smile, she's super serious, and she's like really withdrawn. So we worked on laughing one day. I imagine it's the only time in my life that I'm ever going to teach someone to laugh. And it was fun. It was funny. I'm not sure if she was having fun, but she never has fun. So I had her fake laugh, right? Like we're reading this story, which is funny. There were a bunch of little funny, weird things happening here. So like read something, and I'm like, all right, now I'm going to laugh. No, you laughed. We worked on laughing. It was pretty funny. She got quite a bit better at it, and then she actually giggled a few times through it too. That was hilarious. And then one of my students, Eric, which is the one that I got off drugs because he was on like ADHD medication and he didn't need it at all. He needs like the opposite. He needs like a cocaine boost, and they had him so messed up he couldn't memorize anything. I mean, you would show him anything, right? So it's like, you know, flashcard. I don't use these very much, but if you have like A, you'd be like A, right? You'd be like A, and be like A, and you'd be like A, be like A, be like A, and then you'd be like, and you would have no idea what it is. And you'd say A, no idea what it was, right? You'd say A, and you'd say A, and you'd say, and he would have no idea what it was. He couldn't memorize anything even for a couple of seconds. It was like, you know, it was like a goldfish or something. So you can't learn that way. And they got him off drugs. Eventually I talked to him, and then all of his grades started going up in school. Surprise. And we started making a lot of progress. And at first we were just learning one-off words, and now we're reading stories. And we have this really unique program that I've only ever used with him, where I have him choose between 4 things. We're starting to be able to work on what did you do today? That type of thing too, conversationally. So we're progressing a long ways in the last year. But so we have 4 options of stuff to do. He knows. He can ask questions. He can watch a movie clip. He can listen to a music video or watch a music video, or he can read stories. When we read stories, we read 5 of these little stories together, which are really good because they're fairly simple. They're progressing and how difficult they are. We're in book 2B now. So we've gone through a few of them. We went through a few different stories before that. We've had to experiment with a lot of different stuff. And then they have pictures, so it kind of is, you can kind of see what the words are meaning, which is super important. That is ostensive, a type of ostensive definition. And then the movie clips, I try to get ones with subtitles, so we can look along at those as well. And then the movie or the music videos, I try to get ones with lyrics either at the bottom or throughout the thing. And then questions, I have him ask me 5 various questions. And he's getting better at varying the questions. At first, he was just asking and answering all the questions I had shown him very specifically. And I think he has some of those written down. He takes some notes sometimes. And it's just crazy how much progress he's making. I mean, it's kind of slow, but we're starting at nothing. So it's cool. It's interesting. It's impressive. And a lot of it is getting the enthusiasm there and the engagement. And that's part of why the movies and the music are working so well, too. And he has to learn to be able to understand me. I don't talk quite this fast, but I've been talking faster now. Almost my normal speed for him most of the time. All right. That's a lot of stuff. There's obviously a lot more stuff that happened in there, but we don't need to cover everything. We're coming up on an hour here. Moving forward, I just implemented this. I'm having a 5-day rotation on psychological interventions, essentially, so self-improvement stuff. So I figure I have 5 major psychological issues, ways that things can go wrong. I think that's true for most people probably. You can be hyper-intentional. I mean, you're really focused on trying to do something, and then you keep not doing it. And Viktor Frankl talks about this. You can just relax and not try to do it, and sometimes it'll happen. But you can use paradoxical intention, which is where you try to intend the opposite, and then you end up having like a humor reflex, and it breaks this compulsiveness to it. It's very interesting how it works. And then the next thing is hyper reflection, which I am very much in there. Right, I'm like thinking about everything, but not doing anything. You get hyper reflective, and all the thoughts start twisting on themselves. And Viktor Frankl talks about de-reflection, which is essentially focusing on something outside of yourself so that you don't get turned inwards on those reflections so much. Then dissociation, which Harry Stack Sullivan talks about this, where part of the personality essentially breaks off in one of this, so it's a little bit outside of awareness. So there's some sort of impulse or urge that's outside of awareness, and it would be uncomfortable to incorporate. And anytime you're approaching something like that, you get anxiety. So it preserves the self system and preserves that other stuff out of awareness because it was disapproved of in some point in life to socialize you. So it's a necessary thing. Everyone does it. Everyone has it. When it gets really extreme, you become schizophrenic. So, but you're still on that spectrum already. And so incorporating more of that, right? Or what Carl Jung would call incorporating the shadow, this type of stuff. Different terminologies fluctuate quite a bit in psychology. The next one is parataxic distortions, which is what Harry Stack Sullivan then talks about. And there's different ways you can conceptualize the world. A baby doesn't work on specific things, they work on entire situations. That's called prototaxic. And then next we have parataxic, where we have some distinctions, but they're very idiosyncratic distinctions. So a leaf falling, for instance. There's a poem by E.E. Cummings, which is super good. I like Cummings' stuff. He's a pretty crazy wild guy. And the beginning of the poem, first of all, he writes everything in lowercase, a lot of times even his name. But the beginning of the poem is just L, parentheses, A, right? And there's like blank